Well, hello everyone and welcome to session 2 of this, the Amber and BGA Festival of Excellence. I can see a lot of you are sort of gradually joining the conversation now, but while you're all sort of getting yourselves set, I'm just going to do some housekeeping. For those of you that don't know me, my name is David Woods-Hale. I'm Director of Marketing and Communications at Amber and BGA. And just to let you know, this session is being recorded. So if you miss anything or you want to catch up, don't worry, we'll send you a recording of the session after the festival is over about a week from now. There's lots of opportunity to get involved in the conversation and ask questions. You'll see there's a Q&A panel on your little control panel on Zoom. So feel free to pop your questions in there and we'll try and get through them towards the end of the session. And also, if you feel brave and you'd like to be on screen and ask your question to some of our panelists, you can put your hand up and we'll find you and turn your camera on so as you can join the conversation as well. So as I mentioned, this is session 2 of the Amber and BGA Festival of Excellence, and it's on entrepreneurship, intrapreneurship, innovation, and creativity, the skills needed to be successful in the modern world for startups and established businesses. I'm super excited to have an amazing panel of entrepreneurial thinkers with us today, chaired by the one and only Jason Allen Scott, who is an advisor, a best-selling author, and keynote speaker. So I'll hand over to Jason to introduce the rest of the panel and take you through the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you all for being here. It's an absolute pleasure. I was actually writing on LinkedIn this morning. What a great pleasure it is to have all of you here, not only those who are watching, but obviously our panelists today, especially in these times. Now, 2 quick things I should say. One, I grew up in a very, very small community in Cape Town, and the only 2 words I struggle to pronounce. The one is party, I say party planner, which is what I used to be many, many years ago. And it so happens that I became a party planner. And the other one is entrepreneur. Entrepreneur. I can never get it right. So funny enough, today's talk is called Entrepreneurship, Intrapreneurship, Innovation and Creativity. So allow me to occasionally fuddle those 2 words, and I think we'll get on just fine. I'm going to start by introducing our panelists, getting straight into it with each one of them, if they'll take the time to introduce who they are and how they serve the world. I'm going to begin with Sharon Cunningham. Sharon, please take the stand.
Thank you very much, Jason. I'm delighted to be here with you all to share some of my experiences of being an entrepreneur. So I'm CEO and co-founder of Shorla Pharma. Shorla Pharma is a specialty pharmaceutical company with a pipeline of products in the oncology space for women's and children's cancers. We specialize in indications for those who are affected by rare cancers, so smaller populations that are easily overlooked, representing a clear unmet need for us and an opportunity to underserved markets, focusing on products that will bring both clinical and commercial value. I'm a chartered accountant by profession with an MBA and a Bachelor of Science in Finance. I co-founded the company 3 years ago exactly, and we are launching our first product for T-cell leukemia in the US this year. So back to you, Alan, or Jason.
I have the pleasure of having 3 first names or 3 surnames. So I don't mind if you go with Jason, Alan, or Scott at this point. Marianne, thank you very much, Sharon, first and foremost. And Marianne, if I could allow you to continue.
Hello, so bonjour everybody. So I'm connecting from France. It's my first time and I'm delighted to be part of the group. So to Jason's point, I can even pardon my French sometimes if the English is not correct. So I work for G Healthcare, so medical imaging and patient, close to patient support. And I'm kind of a dinosaur in my company because more than 25 years, my sole employer, which for younger generation seems to be impossible these days. But my really mission is that I'm a strong believer in humankind and in all of us capacity to move forward and innovate so that we can shape a better future for all of us we want to live in. And I use methodologies, innovation methodologies like design thinking or lean startup associated with neuroscience in order to have teams be actors and shaping their own future. I have a strong intuition and I like to hack good practices and adapt them to the ecosystem I work for. I'm currently a transformation and engagement leader on large CRM digital transformation projects. But as I get bored very quickly, I also supervise and lead some smaller innovation projects, entrepreneur projects that I can talk about later. I have a master's degrees in the US in digital and informatics, because at that time it wasn't existing in France. So I graduated from Boston University, and I've had the chance to live all around the world in the US, Japan, Germany, and whatever. Anyways, I'm currently based in France. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Odamo arigato, and Dankeschön. Thank you very much for that. That was a fantastic explainer. I'm going to go from you to Hamilton Mann. Hamilton, if you'd be kind enough, tell us about yourself and how you serve the world.
So hi everyone, and hi Jason, thank you for having me in this great panel and this conversation about entrepreneurship. So I'm a Hamilton Mann, I'm French also as well, and working for Thales, Thales. So Thales is, I would say, the kind of Lockheed Martin to aerospace and defense companies. You know, Lockheed Martin maybe is, let's say, a worldwide aerospace and defense companies in the US, and Thales is really basically, I would say, the global flagship companies when it comes to help our governments and countries and cities, I would say, to protect citizens. So this is really at the heart of the mission that we address each and every day. And my role in Thales is being in charge of what we call the Global Digital Marketing Initiative that we are running in order to promote our, let's say, services, product and solution to all our markets. And also as well, leading some digital transformation initiative also that impact, of course, the way we work within Thales, but also and especially, I would say, the new type of business model that we want to deliver in order to serve our different customers. And this is really connected to the entrepreneurship, let's say, topics, because when it comes to developing new digital business and new business models also as well, it is really all about business innovation, all about entrepreneurship, intrapreneurship also as well. So I'm glad to have this, let's say, opportunity each and every day to accompany and support, I would say, internal ventures that we develop in Thales, but also as well being a kind of a coach for many, I would say, startups that we can have in France. So we'll be happy to share a little bit of experience about all of this.
Thank you very much. We have two French people in here, one Irish and one British South African. This is a very international panel. Matt James is our last panelist. Matt, if you'd be so kind as to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, so I'm from England, so I've got no excuses for any mispronunciation whatsoever, but that doesn't mean I won't necessarily do some. Yeah, so I head for NatWest Bank in the UK. I head our UK and Europe scouting function. Basically, that involves working in the innovation space, looking to work with partners. That's everything from the startup end of the spectrum right up through to the big tech companies like the GAFAs and so forth. So my role is very much about sort of syndicating propositions around the bank, trying to encourage the organization to take on new technologies, and then really taking those into solutions through the life cycle, from sort of early adoption, doing proof of concept through piloting, and then hopefully into scale implementation for the bank. And I guess, you know, the value of what we do within the bank has probably been really put to the test over the last 12 months with the COVID pandemic, where, you know, we've had to move, you know, a large proportion of the organization into remote working. Most customers we're now dealing with on a digital basis, and I think we wouldn't have been able to really adapt to that if it hadn't been some of the innovations that we put in place over the past 5 or 6 years. I've been in the financial services industry for about just over 30 years. After finishing my Masters in Business Administration at Bristol Business School. Through that time, I've worked in technology, change management, and innovation, and I've worked actually in the innovation space for just about the last 10 years. So working quite a lot, as I say, with startup companies through that period as well. So that's a little bit of intro on myself.
Fantastic, thank you very much. I'm going to bounce it back to Matt before I sort of take it across. I'm in 2 startups at the moment, which is a bit of a nightmare. One with Y Combinator, something called Copus, and another with a fintech startup that was actually within Rocket as part of NatWest, based in London, called Pynk, P-Y-N-K. Is there a reason that NatWest has been on the forefront of innovation and really sort of helping with incubators, accelerators, as they have in the last 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I think there has. I mean, I think although, you know, perhaps in the UK, a lot of people don't really connect banking and innovation in the same sentence. I mean, actually, banks have innovated for centuries. You know, everything from ATMs and card payments and things like that. You know, the actual digitalization of money, the transfer of money has been going on for years. But I think, you know, specifically within NatWest, I mean, as I say, it was probably 9 or 10 years ago, we had a new chief operating officer join the bank, Matt Murrah. He'd spent time in Silicon Valley and really had been, you know, close to and seen and touched all that was going on there in terms of the disruptive technologies that were emerging from that area. And when he joined the bank, he basically said, you know, financial services have got to take notice of what's going on with new technology. And so he had this saying, which was basically, you know, you can describe a burger to somebody, you can explain what they taste like, but actually, unless you get out there and taste it, you won't really know. And that sort of kicked off a whole initiative in the early days about really educating people and getting people to understand, to see, to touch, and to use these new technologies. And I think once people started within the bank to see the potential of that, then things just grew. And I guess in parallel with that, the words startup and innovation, you know, 10 years ago were probably hardly mentioned, and yet, you know, you can't turn a corner now without bumping into people who work in startups. You know, innovations in the news with all the big tech companies, whether it's you know, Tesla or Apple or Google or whomever. You know, there's lots of good and bad going out there, but it's very much something that's highly topical. And I think probably the biggest change that we've seen is I guess, you know, if you went back 15, 20 years, new banking propositions really started with the large corporate customers, and then they slowly worked their way down, and eventually some of them got into the hands of consumers. But I think with the good old smartphone and the development of the smartphone, what has basically happened is people generally, in terms of the way they live, the way they do business, the way they interact with companies, you know, they expect a level of sophisticated digital engagement. And if you can't do that, then, you know, you're not really in the game at all. And I think that drive means that innovation now has started very much on the consumer end and is slowly but surely working its way up the you know, up through sort of business banking and into large corporate banking. And I think, you know, that's those things in together, you know, somebody with a real passion and inspiration and vision in terms of where financial services needed to go, and this real shift in technology in the market has really just come together in that perfect storm that has driven innovation in the bank.
So with NatWest and innovation being so closely tied, we've already had our first question. Now, everyone watching, I'm sure you're going to have lots of questions throughout this. Let me know if I see Marianne leaning in. Is my sound coming across okay? Yes, okay, good. I see people starting to ask questions. which is from Catherine Barnard. Catherine asks, can NatWest help innovative startups, and how? Thank you, Catherine.
Yeah, I think we do it in a number of ways. I mean, funny enough, you mentioned Rocket Space. I was actually involved with bringing Rocket Space into NatWest, and that was a startup hub that basically provided a whole bunch of facilities for startups to grow and to have a community and to work. We have various accelerator programs within the bank, both from entrepreneurs generally, see I'm tripping up on that one now, but also within the financial services known as the fintech space. We run accelerators, and in those, a lot of that is about mentoring and coaching and supporting earlier stage startups to really be able to build their businesses and grow, and actually to leverage the sort of resources that they might not be able to access on their own if they're just trying to get things off the ground sort of in isolation. And I think that's where, I mean, you mentioned Y Combinator, I think a lot of the accelerators and incubators that are all over the world now do a fantastic job in actually helping startup companies get going. I think over and above that, the thing is I think most of the banks now have a real desire and appetite to innovate and to experiment. And one of the things that they've realized is actually a lot of the real talent that's out there now resides in these startup organizations. So actually, if you want to access the best people, the best insights, the best technologies, then you sort of got to engage with the startup community, and therefore you've got functions like innovation and solutions, where I work in most of the banks, and our role is there to help startups engage into the bank, work with the bank, demonstrate their propositions, and then develop them from the place where you can start with a very simple proof of concept, but then potentially after time and working through that, implement these solutions to millions of customers. And, we've got numerous examples of where we've done that.
And maybe in addition to that, for us large companies like GE Healthcare, I mean, we used to think we were the only ones who knew how to innovate, but with all these startups, today there is also good signs of working together. Maybe we have one customer, like a doctor who is specialized in one imaging technique, and they want, and we, GE Healthcare, similar to the bank, where they can bring their expertise of making a project viable, we can also help to go through the medical device certification and so that they can bring to the market their product easier. So it's not the startups against the large companies, the startups against the banks, but it's all together. We have our role to play so that because there are many things to be done, and it's not one against the others, but we can really work collaboratively, small and big together.
Absolutely.
Now, it's interesting you say that, because my next question was going to be, obviously within healthcare and startups, there's a lot of paperwork and there's a lot of barriers to pass through, more than the average startup will ever go through. I suppose the two biggest is probably fintech and healthcare. Sharon, as someone that has created a startup in healthcare, what's that been like? Have they utilized these big companies like GE to accelerate or to move you up, or has it been barriers slowing you down, especially within oncology and things of such importance?
In fact, the opposite, Jason, on the basis that really it's been our regulatory strategy that has accelerated our route to market, has meant that these clinically impactful treatments can have commercial value as well through the incentives that we can take advantage of, be it a regulatory incentive that means you get accelerated approval and so on. So in fact, my company hasn't been supported by either a bank or a large corporate in terms of getting to where we've got to today. So it is a little bit different, and I'm happy to give you a little bit of background on that. So when we started the company, myself and my co-founder, and her background is in regulatory. I'm actually an accountant, so very much a complementary skill set, like-minded individuals, but virtually no crossover in terms of our skill set. And so by identifying these products and validating by talking to the clinicians and the people that were going to reimburse the products in the US market, the US being our initial and main target market, that's what validated our idea. And then we figured out a go-to-market strategy after that. Having done all that, built our business plan, we were then in a position where we were fundable. And so we raised our Series A funding round last year. So very much, taking it ourselves, using our own skills, using our own in-house knowledge, coming up with these products, utilizing consultants and experts along the way, for all the things that we know, all the knowledge that we needed to get, in order to package it up and then get it funded and proceed onwards then to market.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So there is a real opportunity for innovation to be created with the help of a larger company. Now, Hamilton, this is obviously in your wheelhouse. You are specializing innovation. You're within a large company. How did your journey lead you to where you are now? And could you give us a little bit of a background in that, if you don't mind?
Okay, so basically, the journey, let's say the digital transformation journey that we have started something around 4 years ago, in a more structured way, I would say. Let's say it starts with three convictions. The first one is about that innovation is not just about technology. Innovation is also about business. So when it comes to innovation, we really need to have the skill set and the mindset in order to be able to invent new way of, let's say, delivering businesses and delivering customer experience. So that was one. The second point was related to the, let's say, customer centricity. And this is really related to the cultural aspect that is, let's say, a key ingredient, a key factor of success for any digital transformation and any, let's say, broader business innovation. So the second point was really about, okay, how can we make ourselves even more customer centric in the way we work, in the way we also address, let's say, different challenges and issues for our customers. And the last but not least point was really about our effectiveness and efficiency, not to say our agility. As part of the big companies, you always have a challenge when it comes to being agile. This is by design, I would say, the challenge that you really have to address in order to be able to really be in time to market, really be able to deliver the real level of excellence that is expected from you by your customer and prospect, etc. So really 3 points at the very beginning of the agenda. First, business innovation, because innovation is not just about technology and new technology, and actually digital transformation is really more about inventing new businesses, let's say, than just about the new technology that is bringing back the digital. Second, the customer centricity, and last but not least, really the agility of the organization, and especially when we are a big organization such as Thales. So where we are as of today, first, I really want to say in a very humble way that this is really a journey, and we have started many things, let's say, in parallel, and we have made several proof of concept POCs, several kind of MVP. We have made also a great participation in order to contribute to the broader ecosystem that work on our different markets, not, for example, in particular with so many startups. But definitely, we are still in the journey, and this is a journey where each and every one of us are really each and every day learning something new. This is really a path forward, let's say, the progress and the learning, I would say, each and every day for the executive management, but of course, and also for the teams in each part of the organization. So we are in that journey, and I think that's also the context of the pandemic is quite challenging ourselves in that journey, because it forced us to accelerate in a way. And to me, bottom line, as far as we are in that journey, I would say that this is for us a key opportunity to participate, and this is really why we made that point as a purpose for all the group. This is for us a real opportunity to participate in making the world a little bit better, I would say. This is very important, that at the heart of the reflection, the innovation, the invention that we invest in, this is really important that we make sure that what we are building is really emphasizes the way that the way to make a world being a better place, and especially make the world a kind of a place where everybody, let's say, can trust, I would say. So being able to, let's say, build a future that we can all trust, based on all the issues and all the challenges that we see in the world, not mentioning the environmental, let's say, dimension, security aspect, etc., etc. So I would say, basically, bottom line, as far as we are in that journey, we really make sure, and we really want to even more consider how to, let's say, continue our transformation, continue to innovate, continue to invest in that journey, but also making sure that as a purpose, we really build a future that we can all trust.
Fantastic. Hassan mentioned a few times about worldwide, and I see one of our questions is directed to Matt to NatWest innovation appetite. Is it global or is it UK centric? Matt, are you happy to answer that question?
Yeah, sure. It's very much global. So I guess that's one of the things about innovation technology. It really transcends borders. We have a small team actually based in Silicon Valley who are engaged into the ecosystem there. I actually work in London, but one of the other teams who works in the scouting space focuses into Israel, which is a real leading ecosystem in terms of cybersecurity and other sort of security type solutions. We reach into Asia Pacific, keeping an eye on what's going on in China in the technology space, but also across Australia, Hong Kong, Singapore, and so we'll say, yeah, very, very much a global view, because if there's one thing for sure, that the best ideas, can come from anywhere. And I think, like most things in innovation, actually recognizing, the importance of diversity and engaging broadly, and going out there and networking and meeting as many people as possible from as many different cultures and backgrounds is one of the most important things I think you can do if you're gonna really make the most of the potential that's out there.
Fantastic. The next question comes from someone that comments a lot on my YouTube videos and blogs. It's anonymous, who has asked the question. She or he has worked for 4 years in a multinational company as a marketing manager, and now wants to change career, and has asked Sharon to answer the question. Sharon, would you be so kind as to answer that question for us? Any interview tips that might help with this career change?
Of course, and I can relate to this one, I think, because I trained as a chartered accountant with PwC, and at that point, once I was fully qualified and I was looking at what I wanted to do next, I was very drawn to the startup world as well, and I was lucky to secure a position with a company called Airgen Pharma. It was in the relatively early stages. The co-founders had actually done an MBA, and then they had put their business plan that they had to come up with as part of one of their modules into practice and form the company. And I was very intrigued by that. I think it was something that I could see myself doing eventually, and I felt like I wanted to be part of it. But really, for me, what made my mind up about joining that particular company was when I met the two co-founders. Their passion, their drive was infectious. I was very, very excited after that initial discussion with them. And it was very much a two-way interview process. And I think that's the way it should be. when you're joining a startup, you're leaving, you know, and you said you're working there for 4 years as a marketing manager, a secure job, particularly in the current environment. When I was interviewing, actually, it was right at in the depths of recession in 2010. And so, you know, it was a big decision. It was a risky decision, but that didn't stop me because I really, really believed in the founders of the company. So I think that aspect of it is the most important. Well, I suppose that, and ensuring that their vision for the company matches, you know, your own particular purpose and vision, and where you want to go, and what industry you want to work in. So hopefully that gives you some help.
Yeah, if I can add, maybe I would say the difference I see when I work with startups or incubators is that when you leave a large group like ours, is you have to, like Sharon said, to not fall in love with the problem to be solved, to be sure that the mission and the vision and the guts that you'll have to use are in sync with yourself, even more than in a larger company, because that's why you will get up in the morning. And so there's no real answer. You just have to pick into yourself and find, and like Sharon, I think, testified nicely, is you have to, you know it by yourself if it's the right one, because it fits you also.
Absolutely. I love what they said about also what Sharon mentioned about questioning the startup as well. And the tips that we get in Y Combinator is to ask 4 questions. Is what the startup doing 10 times faster, 10 times better, or 10 times cheaper than its closest competitor? And is the founder the perfect fit to solve the problem? So a question to ask them, and then just trust your gut, something Marion talks about quite a bit. And I think it's definitely true when working with a startup. Have a mission, have a why that you believe in, that's strong enough to get you up in the morning and to do the silly hours and to hear the constant rejection. You're probably going to hear working at a startup. Our next question comes in. Let me bring that up. Our next question is for Marianne. It's when a startup wants to reach a well-established company looking to develop a B2B relationship, who is the most appropriate person to get in touch, and how is the best way to do so? And that is by, I'm not going to slaughter your name, but Tamar.
Okay, so it will be a little like the previous question. It depends. It depends. You heard Sharon earlier, or even Matt, to say that the company comes with its strengths and maybe needs help and associated with. So depending on if I have a good idea, my prototype is good, maybe I'm not so much a marketing person, so I need help on marketing. Maybe I need help on intellectual property, and that's the people I need to reach out to. And typically there are many innovation entrepreneur groups that you can sign up with, so that you extend also your network, and when time comes, you hit the the competency you need to address the large company.
Great answer. Thank you very much. Before I get back into the Q&A, which I'll do in a second, there is a question of the entrepreneurial mindset. Is there such a thing? And if so, what traits make up that mindset? And it's an open question. Feel free, whoever wants to answer it first.
Yeah, I mean, I'll make a start. I mean, I think there's lots of things in there. I guess I work more as an intrapreneur than an entrepreneur. But I mean, one thing that I always say to people when they join the team is innovation, you know, requires 3 things: inspiration, and there's a bit of perspiration, and there's a bit of frustration. And you've got to be resilient enough to deal with all of those things. I mean, it's a fantastic environment to work in, forward-looking, interesting, you know, very much at the forefront of strategy and where organizations are going. But, you know, that doesn't come easy. You've got to be able to learn, to adapt, to change. You've got to have lots of agility. You've got to have the resiliency to be able to pick yourself up when you fail and start again, and to keep trying. And I think, you know, particularly within large organizations, you've also got to recognize that sometimes you'll be pushing against the way things have always been done and the status quo, and that you know, you've got to be able to continue to keep going when you feel like you're that lone voice in the wilderness. And I think, to me, you know, that resiliency and that persistency are really important attributes for anyone wanting to get into either entrepreneurship or intrapreneurship.
I might add to that, Jason, as well, if that's okay. So a lot of what Matt has said definitely resonates. They're the things I feel like I have to be every single day in order to keep striving. But I've also found a couple of things. One, creativity tends to be, you know, a mindset that is very consistent among entrepreneurs, but certainly successful ones. I think this thing of knowing that, you know, there's no need to think outside the box, but rather realize there is no box. There's always a solution, but you just have to find it. Secondly, passion, and remembering the kind of the vision, being hyper focused on what it is you're trying to achieve, so that you're every morning with that purpose. And then finally, risk tolerance. So having a healthy attitude to risk, being able to take calculated risk, and you know, and because you're going to have to do that every single day.
Absolutely. I love that idea of focus. Follow one course until successful. I'm going to go back to our Q&A for a split second. Catherine has asked, I can't see Catherine's surname, she's asked, Sharon, that is why our company is called Whatbox. Well, thank you, Catherine, for that. I have no idea what you're referring to, so I will move the next. Our next question is from Anos again. Do you have any advice for nurturing creativity while studying a specific curriculum, or is it something you either have or you don't? I suppose much like the entrepreneurial mindset we just spoke about. Answer to the panel. Feel free, anyone who feels they can answer that best.
Yeah, I'll. It's something I'm really strong about. Feel strong about is that. Especially in large companies, or when we have done a curriculum, not sure even in class why I'm doing it, is everybody can learn to be creative and to look outside, because as kids that's how we were, and as adults we sometimes forget to use that. But there are really tools like design thinking, and so once you practice, it just becomes again second nature, as if you were a kid. And everybody can learn. There is no how do you say discrimination? Really, everybody, whatever your character is, you can learn or relearn.
Fantastic. Let me say that again. The question sort of lies from that, which is, as an MBA graduate, how can I improve my ability to become a successful entrepreneur? Is an MBA enough? And of course, forget the fact that we're part of a panel called from the Association of MBAs. Feel free to answer honestly.
I guess I think, you know, an MBA gives you a good broad foundation, and I think that's because it gives you the insight into different aspects of running a business, whether it's finance, whether it's marketing, whether it's operations. You know, it gives you that insight. But I think the thing for me about being either an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur is it's a practical thing. It takes practice. You know, you've got to give it a try. You've got to fail. You've got to learn. You've got to try again. You know, okay, you might be lucky. You might come up with an idea, walk into it, successful first time. But I think, you know, most successful entrepreneurs will probably say to you they failed more times than they succeeded. And I think, you know, actually giving it a go, trying it, having that resiliency is a big aspect of it.
I can add to that as well, Jason. Yeah, so having done obviously the MBA as well, and while it was, you know, extremely beneficial and I took huge learnings from it, But in addition to that, what I felt has helped me. So I think, you know, the academic stuff and the kind of the knowledge that you learn is a tick box, and it's a given. Outside of that, there are three things that I remember and I strongly believe have kind of impacted my success to date. Number one, my network. And I don't think you can start soon enough on growing and developing your network. And look, obviously the MBA is a good place to start. And I feel like that was really when that kind of clicked with me as well, when I was doing the MBA, and I realized, oh God, you know, these connections that I'm making have the potential to be very powerful. And that has been the case. Secondly, branding. And when I say branding, I mean your own personal brand and the company that you work for, the company that you start up. Incredibly important that you identify what it is that makes you unique or your company unique, and embrace that then every single day. And then thirdly, mentoring. And again, that has been hugely impactful for me. I have mentors, you know, since I started my career, and I have different mentors for different things. And I mentor people, and I mentor people for different, you know, in different areas for different reasons. But mentoring is extremely powerful. And honestly, you'll be surprised at how willing successful people are to help you once you can demonstrate to them that you are committed. So those three things would be very key for me.
Yeah, and to finish, I mean, I didn't do an MBA, but a master's. The only thing, and the two things I use every day from my degree in Boston is, well, speak English, that's the first. And the second is learn to learn. And this is what, if you think with an MBA or whatever, any degree, you know it all, that's, I believe, the wrong attitude, because things change very quickly. And what you even have learned this year or last year at the MBA is probably already obsolete. So the fact you know, and that you continue to open up and listen what's happening, that's where you will gain the practice, and that the others talked about.
Just to add a few points on top of that, I think that this is something that it is quite very important question in a way, because most of, let's say, people coming to the academic world to get some new learning, new thinking, new ideas, and feed their reflection, and hopefully be able to, let's say, launch an entrepreneurial project. So I just want to say two things. The first is that you don't need an MBA to be an entrepreneur and to act like an entrepreneur. Let's be clear. You don't need an MBA to do that. First point. Second point, when you learn from academic, this is a great opportunity that you really have, because many people around the world do not have that opportunity. So when you get that opportunity, let's of course get the opportunity first to learn, because the MBA gives you the opportunity to, let's say, put you around you and in front of your eyes many things that has been learned by practices, thanks to, I would say, return of experience, thanks to proof points, thanks to also leaders that comes to, let's say, with their experience and say, look, this things works, this framework works. This kind of a reflection and analysis, it makes sense, etc. So you get the opportunity to be connected, let's say, directly to all of this, which is a kind of a, I would say, a legacy, I would say. But again, it is a legacy based on what already exists, not based on what should be exist in the future. So this is something that you need to create. This is something that you need to invent in a way. So it means that second, while taking the benefits from the learning that you get from your MBA, any academic, high-class academic, I would say, opportunities, make sure that you also forge your own way of thinking the new, of thinking the future, because everything that you are going to learn from now, especially in an MBA in a way, is really based on the legacy type of insight that we know today. But the future is made of many things that we don't know.
Fantastic, thank you very much. As someone who built and sold 3 businesses before I even knew what an MBA was. I must say that my partner was studying through Warwick University for her MBA, and her teaching, her sort of telling me things really helped me not make mistakes, in all fairness. I think it's one of the best things it did is she would give me case studies so that I wouldn't have to make those mistakes to get those results. And I think it's another great thing about an MBA. And I can talk from everyone I've met through these MBA programs, through Association of MBAs, your network is your net worth. And Sharon said that, I think we can all agree, there's a certain greatness that comes from the 5 people you spend the most time with, whether that is in Zoom meetings, whether that's virtually through the books you're reading, the case studies you've been, your lecturers, people and your peers. Really look at that, and it does make an absolutely gigantic difference. But also remember, as Hamilton said, a lot of what you're learning is legacy. It's things that have worked in the past. That doesn't mean it's guaranteed to work in the future. The hardest trick, as they say, both with Sharon said it and the Matrix, is not bending the spoon, but remembering the spoon doesn't even exist in the first place. Moving us to our next is, I'm not going to answer another anonymous. If you can't put your name down, you're not going to get answered. Here's a question. I found some of startups develop a massive valuation based on the capability of the founder to tell a story. But later, as the fundamentals did not come along, the value falls. Can you share some of your opinions on how to incorporate narrative skills and analytical skills to avoid this kind of tragedy from happening in the future? Good question. Does anybody want to take that on? That's a big one.
I'll kick things off. So I guess, and I'd probably pick up on something that Sharon mentioned earlier, which is, I think if you're going into a startup, then it's about having the right team about you, and that might be a co-founder, it might be mentors, it might be a network of advisors, and I think actually having people with complementary skills and a diversity of views and perspectives on problems is essential. People who are going to challenge you, who are going to question you, who are going to make you rethink stuff, and really bring added value into what you're doing. I think some of the sorts of organizations that were alluded to there, what you have is a very strong founder who is sort of leading on it, but you wonder sometimes whether they had sufficient challenge and diversity around them to make them think differently and do things differently. And I think that to me is a real key thing. I think the other one is, I do think times are changing slightly, and it's something that's probably been accelerated in the last 12 months as venture capitalists have become a little bit more risk averse with their investments. But 4 or 5 years ago, there was a saying in Silicon Valley, which was around large organizations who basically just threw money at startups, and they called it stupid money. And what they meant by that was, it was people who were investing on the wave of the idea of innovation. But what they weren't doing is they weren't doing the fundamental analysis of those businesses on whether there was long-term value. What is the long-term value that is going to be delivered to the consumer, to society, as a result of what you're doing? And I think various people have touched on it around the panel today. Marielle mentioned it in her introduction. Actually, purpose is a very strong aspect of that. Why are you doing it? What are you trying to do to achieve it? It's not just about trying to bump the value up and then sell it on. What difference are you trying to make to the world, to the customer, in your endeavor? And I think actually understanding that long-term value is part of what makes a difference.
Yeah, and maybe no, go ahead. Oh.
No, I just wanted to add and build on that. I think that there is many kind of skill that is needed when you wants to be successful as an entrepreneur. So definitely one people will not have all those skills that is needed to succeed. And this is really why you need to, of course, see those kind of projects as a kind of a teamwork project. And this is, to me, the first key ingredient, key elements that is at the heart of this way of, let's say, of addressing, let's say, the perception and the vision that you have with in the world, you know, just to bring a contribution. So it is a teamwork. You will not, and you will never have all the skill set and all the, I would say, the mindset and the perspective to succeed and to really see all the different aspects that is needed. So this is a teamwork. So it comes to the fact that you first, let's say, challenge is really be able to be part of the good team, recruit the good team, be with the right people, your people as part of the project team, as part of the entrepreneurial project team, but also your ecosystem. It is really about a people matter. And the point that I want to also emphasize on is really about, let's say, the fact that first, this is not about the idea. Sometimes we, you know, focus on the fact that, okay, we need to come up with the great idea and we need to have the great idea. And I know also people that are really afraid about, you know, being stolen about their idea. And so they have some great idea and surprising idea. And they're like protecting the idea like, you know, someone are going to steal their idea. But guess what? I never seen no ID running by himself. Okay, so there is no ID, you know, in the world running by itself. It is always a team behind that ID, and this is the team that makes the difference, no matter what. So if you want to make the difference, be, let's say, sure that you are really part of the, let's say, good team. And the good team is very simple. It's really the team that bring different perspective and different skill sets, I would say, in the table, so you are able to let's say, you know, do many things and have a kind of let's say, different view of different aspects. So this is to me a very important point. And last but not least, when it comes to, let's say, some kind of skills such as narrative skills, etc., etc. I mean, as soon as you find your purpose, I mean, we talk about those this point, let's say, at the very beginning of this panel. As soon as you find your purpose, the reason why you want to do something, the reason why you think it is important from your eyes to do it, not only you will find, let's say, the energy to wake up every morning to do this, but also you will encourage and you will influence and you will inspire others to come, let's say, to your place and to come to you and say, look, I want also to contribute and to make that with you. Purpose is everything. You will be, let's say, fascinating to see how much you can be eloquent and how much you can be convincing people at the very moment when you find the way to put your energy for a greater purpose that, let's say, encourage people and encourage others to come in that, let's say, perspective in that way and say, it really makes sense for me. No matter where I live, it really makes sense for me and I want to do something to help you or I want to do something with you. So really, teamwork and purpose.
Yeah, and just to complement, if you are coming, because I think the question was also if you join a team and you don't know, if you like the idea to what was just said about is ensure that the person, the talker, is listening to you, because it's true that some entrepreneurs, in French we say they fall in love with the solution, and as a result they are now not listening anymore to feedback and ideas, and they are not taking critique, and they don't resiliate, and then you kind of get stuck. So the idea might have been wonderful, the purpose, but if there is not the co-construction that Hamilton just talked about, then you can't advance. Okay, so the first tip is, if you see they're not listening to your ideas, okay, and the second trick, I talked about it at the beginning, is if the person falls in love with its solution, his or her solution, and not about the problem, then you also know that in the end it will be they will come to a dead end. So, you know, look at what is the purpose and do they really serve the purpose, and not just feel, because there's other questions coming on, I'm afraid to show my idea. like was just said before, many people before you had already the same idea. So it's actually a good point. If you find some other people who have the same idea as you, is because it means that the market will be there. Okay, so fall in love with your problem, not your solution.
Before I let Sharon comment, in Y Combinator, we call this a slap. It's a solution looking for a problem. So I love that you said that. Sharon, please.
And actually, just to follow on from that, Jason, what you've just said, and Marianne, to your points as well, and something that, you know, I had to consciously be aware of and learn very early on in the startup of my company, but it's that whole thing of the importance of having an intimate relationship with the problem that you're trying to solve, but being emotionally detached from the solution. And I think if I take that question from one of the audience as being a prospective employee, for example, and, you know, and trying to figure out whether or not the founder, is the type of person that you want to work with, well, you know, them demonstrating that attitude, as Marianne said, listening to what you have to say. I mean, that's hugely important. But also, you know, and this is something that I would have done in my first interview when I joined my startup, the company I worked in before I started up my own company. I was joining as an accountant, and I asked in the interview for a set of accounts so that I could assess the health of the company, the balance sheet, know what the cash runway was, know you know, what I was going into with my eyes wide open. And I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. In fact, you know, you should be respected to get the information that you need in order to be able to make an informed decision. And so whatever that is, you should feel like you're able to ask for it. So that's my contribution, Jason. Thank you.
That was fantastic. Thank you. I will push back slightly on Hamilton's comment about having passion, and if you believe in it enough, it's good enough. The end of that question was, what narrative skills would you possess? Warren Buffett, with all these successes he has, often speaks about going to Carnegie School because he learned the ability to explain his value. So my suggestion would be to find courses, to find, whether it's virtually or through the MBA program, ways in which you can explain your value proposition better, why people should join, what your product does, what problem it solves. If you can't explain that well in a language in which people can understand, you can have the greatest passion, why, mission, vision, value on the planet and not get a step further. So take a moment to really understand what you're saying, listen to whom you're speaking to for feedback, and keep practicing. Every single day at YC, we have to try our product again and again and again. Every Thursday, we pitch it to a group, we get feedback on Friday, and we start again. Keep pitching. Carnegie says that the difference between a horse that's spooked by a train and a horse that isn't is a horse that isn't spooked by a train often lives near a train. So just keep pitching, keep getting feedback, keep fixing your pitch to better explain your value proposition. The next question comes in, and protecting your idea. Sharon spoke about, Marianne spoke about, which this idea, and it's just this, I think, the chat box, not the Q&A box. Here we go. May I ask, as a step, what measures do you take to ensure the business idea won't be replicated? And if it's replicated, what can you do to defend your market share? And that's from Soko Chow.
I think I mentioned it just earlier, is that your idea, the fear is always you have an idea and then we tell you go and test it. And then you say, no, somebody's going to steal it. As I said before, if somebody probably woke up before you and already had the idea. So it's actually good, especially if somebody else has the idea, to check and test what works well and doesn't fit the problem, because you will learn from there too. And maybe it's also associate, because, you know, who knows? And it's more about the intellectual property that you have to be careful about, but typical incubators or some research center, they help you also protect your intellectual property. But other than that, if somebody has the idea, it's probably a good sign that you will find your market.
Jason, I might just add to that, in my own particular industry, we can protect the products in two ways. So one, the intellectual property, and then secondly, from a regulatory perspective, by working on orphan drugs or drugs for rare, smaller populations, we can get these incentives and these through the regulatory strategies, which means that the FDA, which is the regulator in the US, gives market exclusivity. So there's protection there as well. And, depending on the industry, there may be additional protections in your particular space as well. But I think I agree with what Marianne is saying. It's a good sign if other people are thinking of it, and really it's all about the execution. Many people can have these great ideas, but unless you can develop your go-to-market strategy and execute properly, ideas aren't worth anything.
Absolutely. Look at Vine and TikTok. It's the exact same idea. TikTok outperformed, out-executed Vine. No one even remembers Vine, and TikTok is the fastest growing social media in history. Now, all these things we're talking about, red water opportunities, blue water opportunities, it's all about risk. And there seems to be a certain belief system that entrepreneurs are very much about risk, about taking on risk. Do you believe that? And is there a way to mitigate risk as an entrepreneur or intrapreneur? Start with Hamilton. Hamilton, would you like to answer the question?
Yeah, this is let's say quite a complex, let's say, subject, because this is really related to the mindset. This is not an art skill. This is really a soft skill, and basically this is something that you can learn, of course, about reading books, participating in the MBA program, etc. But this is also really part of the personality, who you are, intrinsically at the heart of yourself. So your willingness to take risk is, challenging many aspects of your own, very own intimate personality. So this is something to me that is also a key ingredient of success. Because definitely the less you do have a willingness to take risk, and the less you really are able to let's say, to be an entrepreneur. So it means that this is something that is, I would say, at the heart of the personality. This is something that can be built, that can be developed, of course, because I think that the more we go on the test and learn, let's say, practices, the more we fail well, and the more we gain resilience in order to say, hey, look, I failed several times, I'm still there, and I'm not dead about it, so I can try again. And so it helps to take risk, and it helps to take bigger and bigger risk. But definitely, I think that the recipe, if it exists, I would say, is really based about practices, test and learn, do things, not really about thinking, because reflection and thinking, lead you also to raise many doubts and many reasons to not doing it. I need to do this, I need to do this, but if I'm not, if I do not have this and this and this and this, it will not be possible, or it will be risky. And you turn around on that reflection. This is Mark Twain was saying that those people have done this because they didn't know that it was impossible to do it. So this is it. Taking risk is really at the heart, and it's really a key part of being an entrepreneur. And basically, you will find your own way of being a kind of let's say, risky guy, I would say, or have an appetite to take risk. This is really something that will let's say, shape your personality as well. This is something around the soft skills that you can develop along the way. And last but not least, the more you test, the more you learn, and the more you will be able to test risk.
Sharon, you're an accountant, not the most famous of risk takers as a career path. Do you have a statement or something you'd like to add to that?
I'm not your typical accountant, just to start with that. Anything but those stereotypes that are out there. In terms of the question that was asked, yeah, there's a huge amount of risk, but assuming you have a product or an idea that solves an unmet need and there is a market for it, and once you've proven all of those things, really the success is in the execution, the revenues, and therefore the value of the company. To mitigate the risks along the way, to my mind, it's all about a number of key things. Number one, the team you have around you. So whether it's employees and diverse, different skills, different mindsets, but all working towards a common vision. Investors, it's not just money. It should be about sharing a common purpose, and it should be about sharing of experiences and helping along the way as well. Your board of directors, I mean, it's hugely important for those diverse perspectives and people with the proven track record that can help guide you along the way, and then your advisors as well. So that's one, that's the people. Secondly, then your product. And in my case, it's about a portfolio of products. It's about continuously building that pipeline from an R&D perspective to ensure that all your eggs aren't in one basket, and that you have a fallback position, or you have a future pipeline on the way. Next, IP, we spoke about it already, goes without saying, the protection. And then finally, the regulatory strategy or the exclusivity that comes with that. That will help mitigate your risk as well.
Yeah, and maybe depending on if it's for a project in a large company or a small startup, I would add is in innovation, we talk about what is your acceptable risk you will take. And it's like if you go, to the casino and play, what is the money you are not going to go beyond to protect also your family, your employees, and stay with your values. So the fact, if you explicit that, it also helps the others accept when you say, no, this is enough. And now we have gone to the limit. So it's important to explicit it and just not think that the money or everything will come all along, and to say, I'm going to go to that point, acceptable risk, and have, as we said before, the team approve it, and then you stick to it. It's okay to say no, and to say, we've tried it and it's not possible. That's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably add to that. I mean, I think no progress is made without risk being taken. But I think there's also the aspect which is about considering the risks that apply to your business and how they might impact your business, and how you might mitigate them. And particularly, like whether it's healthcare, whether it's banking, probably similarly in other industries, it's about understanding the risks that are applicable to your sphere. Some things are absolute. So breaching regulatory risks is probably not going to be acceptable. You're not going to last long if you're doing things in that sort of space. Consider what the operational risks of your business are. Is resiliency, absolutely critical? If it is, where are the issues around the resiliency of your solution, your supply chain, your operations, your service, whatever it might be. And I think also, don't forget reputational risk. And probably the biggest illustration to that was, I think, was it Gerald Ratner, who was asked a question about some of his products, and who said, because it's total crap. And he just overnight wiped billions off his organization. So, I think particularly with social media, you've got to be very aware of that reputational side of things, because bad news can travel fast, but similarly good news can. So I think actually thinking about the risk environment within which you're operating, considering what the main risks to your business is, and thinking what you're actively going to do about them, I would say is quite a key aspect.
Great answer. We've only got a couple more minutes, and then I'm going to do Q&A. So everyone who's waiting in the Q&A, thank you for your patience thus far. I have one more question for each of you, and then I'll go through systematically
just
answer
maybe
all the questions.
Just Jason, maybe one point also, again, sometimes the question that you ask is really the basic of the framework where you are going to limit your reflection, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm sure I was questioning also in my mind the question about mitigating risk. This is interesting because when you focus your reflection about how am I going to mitigate the risk, you really are in a kind of a framework where you want to be sure to understand each and every risk, and you really are in a framework where you need to put yourself and put your energy of finding the action that will help you to mitigate that risk. And this is really basically the goals that you're going to, let's say, achieve there. The question is, let's rephrase and reframe the question about how to embrace risk. And this is when you start to, let's say, embrace a new kind of reflection where you accept the unknown. This is also something that will help you as an entrepreneur to accept the unknown, meaning that sometimes you will need to go in a direction not knowing every risk in that direction, because if you really put as a very condition of going to that direction, as soon as you know every risk, as soon as you have mitigated the risk, sometimes you are not going to go in that direction, right? So also as an entrepreneur, you need to be resilient enough to go in a direction not knowing about the risk, not knowing about how to mitigate that risk. And guess what? With the mindset of being able to say, hey, I'm going to figure out when the thing is going to happen, right? Because this is where sometimes happen good ideas, good way of thinking, and solution that you will never think about if you're just in your chair and thinking about what kind of risk will happen and how to deal with it.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. That's a very good point. I am risk averse, interestingly enough, for someone that makes a living doing this, but I believe you should mitigate your risk as low as humanly possible. I get money before I build product or services or even platforms, and I follow the same model as I think most of the most rigorous people in the world. Prove the model, prove there's money, prove you have the right people in place, take all of that, and then go off, make the product and service, bring it to market, and learn, adapt, and innovate in a cycle form. And I often go for red water opportunities because I think that's where the sharks go. They don't go where it's blue and wait. They go where it's red and eat. So moving to our last quick fire questions, as I sort of sum this up before we go to Q&A, I'm going to ask you one question each, and I'm just going to run it through. The first thing that comes to mind, please feel free to say it. And I'm going to start in reverse. Hamilton is going to be our first. Hamilton, best advice to founders?
Best advice to founders. First, make sure that you, let's say, recruit the right people. The teamwork and the team is really a key aspect of your success. First point. Second point, you will be in the journey where let's say, the definition of done, okay? The definition of done is not something that you will find in your business plan, is not something that you will find in your reflection, is not something there. The definition of done is really something that will be concretized along the way, step by step, test and learn. And when we say test and learn, we say that you will learn along the way. This is not something that you will learn, from scratch at the beginning and then, oh, this is okay, we execute. You will learn along the way. So really important. And I would say last but not least, and this is also connected to a question that was raising, pitch the value, not the features, not the solution, not the features. Pitch the value. What am I bringing to someone else as a value? This is really key.
Fantastic, love that. Sean, best advice you were ever given, or a mantra that has helped you get through, as we talked about, the times when you needed to be resilient, the times you needed to push forward, the times when you had to redefine the word done?
A mentor once said to me years ago, you're only as good as the last thing you did, the last piece of work, the last task, the last panel discussion you're on or whatever. And remembering that has really kind of drove me on in times when, sometimes you're tempted to send something that, you mightn't have had enough time or as much time as you would have liked to work on it. But it has stopped me, you know, and that quality is so much more important. I definitely think that's been the best piece of advice for me.
I love that. Marianne, what is the best skill to learn as an intrapreneur, someone working within a large organization? What skill can they learn that will benefit them the most?
There's many. I'll start maybe with the opposite. Is today sometimes in some of our large companies, we are more behaving as employees as sheep and as, you know, and we forget the human. So the first is entrepreneur, like for the entrepreneur, like Hamilton just said, what, you know, be conscious of your colleagues, of your customer, and who you want to solve the problem for. So putting back the human in the center is the first. The second is, we talked about agility, and sometimes it looks like, oops, the big buzzword, but agility is, I'll use what Hamilton said, is test and learn. So you have an idea, you prototype early, don't invest zillions of, you prototype early, you get feedback, you accept the feedback, and you continue like that. So this is what I mean. Once I know that the people put the human back in the center and they accept, test and learn, then it's going easier. So it's the two first ones I would focus on.
Fantastic. Matt, someone within something like NatWest that's all about innovation, is there any advice you'd like to give to entrepreneurs out there about innovation, especially when it comes to putting themselves forward to work with large organizations like NatWest?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think there's a couple. One has been mentioned several times around the panel, and that is, you know, build your network, get to know people, you know, go to events even if they're virtual, find names, you know, join networks on LinkedIn, try and make connections. I think is a key one. And I think the other one is, as you approach large organizations, you have to realize, even if you've got a fantastic idea, it's got to come to that business, to that large organization at the right time. So, you know, I think having those connections and building those relationships is important, because when you first go and speak to someone, the timing might not be right. It may not be a priority. They may be focusing on other things. You may be still a little bit early in your journey and therefore aren't quite right yet. But having that persistency and being able to go back and having those contacts and having that network is the thing that I think will eventually see you through.
Brilliant. I'm going to ask some questions and then have one question right at the end. So let's go. And I'm going to work backwards. Can we please get some tips to get teams adopt the changes the intrapreneurship implies sometimes? So what am I getting from that? Marianne, I believe you'd like to answer this question.
I talked just about it a little before, but some of the tips, in addition, I would say refocus on teamwork, but as diversity of, trying to avoid the silos. In large companies, we work in sometimes in silos. And as I think African word says, is alone I'll go faster, but together we'll go further. And this in our companies where we have every quarter to deliver, we always sometimes forget about the future. So accepting also the diversity and going with my ecosystem. So not only myself, that would be an additional one.
Love that. Anybody else would like to add to that before I move to the next question? Okay, moving to the next question. First, to anyone, if you've still got questions, this is your last chance to get them in before we close up. Comes from Blair Maxwell. Marianne, I see you'd like to answer this question as well, but guys, everyone wants to go after Marianne. Oh, no, sorry.
Sorry, it's an old one, but okay. Yeah. Okay.
So
yeah,
this
it's
person
too.
is. Oh.
Yeah.
You're
it's
doing
too,
so well up to that point, Marianne. Feel free to go for it.
No, I know why I raised this one. Is is because it's true that especially in companies where people have been in a long time, sometimes we miss today the new blood, and to show that you, as we talked about, you can assess risk, you can volunteer to help people move forward, and facilitate innovation. It's more on the soft skills. I think historically we say that our children, they will have 10 different jobs, okay, and it will only be on mostly built on the soft skills. So already I would say when you show a large company, it's more now to focus on, you know, what soft skills and what skills do you bring to help teams move forward, not so much your personal, you know, technical expertise.
Wonderful. I'm going to ask each one of you this question, except Sharon. I've got a different question for you, Sharon, because you already answered it. But do you have a mantra? If so, what is it? Could you share it with the audience? I'm going to start with Matt.
Oh, well, it's probably been the one that I mentioned earlier, which is innovation is about inspiration, perspiration, and frustration. I mean, that's the one that I tend to use quite a lot, because I think it's you know, it sort of covers all parts of working in the innovation space for me.
Fantastic. Marianne?
Mandela, I never fail, I learn or I win.
I love Madiba's quotes. Sharon?
So my one was, you know, you're only as good as your last task, Jason, the one that I said earlier, and really remembering that has helped me along the way.
Perfect. Mr. Mann?
Oh, I would say that within our company, we have made a great work in order to come up with a purpose, and we defined a tagline that I think talk very much to many people around the world, which is building a future we can all trust.
Love that. Building a future we can all trust. Mine has anyone in the history of time stupider or less clever than you worked it out? If so, why can't you? And that brings us to a new question from Hillary, which says, where does disruptive ideas or technologies sit in the sphere of risk mitigation? And as an entrepreneur, is this something intrinsic or should be learned? Interesting question. Thank you, Hillary. Anybody want to take on Hillary's question?
I'm not sure I understand the English, actually. That's why it's at the limit. Is why it was it would do I understand it well? Why wouldn't I take a disruptive idea because it's I can't mitigate it? Is that the question?
I'm English and I'm struggling with the question. No offense, Hillary. I think it's because it's been written it's sort of two question in a one-liner.
Yeah,
so
I mean, I guess
where does disrupt?
That's a
Hillary
question.
says yes. Yes.
Okay.
Hillary says
Okay.
yes. That's the question.
Okay. It's I think I can't remember if it's Matt or Hamilton who said it earlier. Is you might have a great idea, and yes, it will save the world. But if your ecosystem is not ready to get it, nobody's going to buy. So if you are too early, you have to hold it a little, maybe.
I think the bit I'd add to that, and it was probably picking up on when I was talking about risk and then what Hamilton came cancelled with, and I think I agree with, you know, for me I agree with both, and I think the thing about risk and opportunity, they're two sides of the same coin, and you've got to be prepared to look at both sides. Actually, most of the biggest opportunities come from where there are quite often the biggest risks. So I think, you know, looking at those new technologies, looking at those new ways of working, understanding what problems that can solve, what opportunities that can present. Yes, it's always going to be risky, but that's potentially where the biggest benefits could lie.
Yeah, and I can give you actually a really good example on a company who did that. Is you know, all IoT and connected objects in your home, and what would be best if you could connect your weighing machine, even, hey, your watch, so that your doctor knows how you are doing, especially in the pandemic world. Well, it's maybe a French thing, not a British doctors, but whenever you would, send your information to the doctor, he would say, I don't believe the machine, so he would make you do the exams again. Okay, so the company who was selling this, Visiomed, they changed, as we say, pond. Okay, and now they go into pharmacies and they have the boxes that you might have seen where the IoTs are connected, they are tested, they are proven by the doctor, is trained on the other side, and he trusts the measure. Okay, so all of us patients, we thought would think, hey, this is a good idea, but the doctors don't agree. Okay, that's what I mean by ecosystem. So then you have to either wait, or you find a new pond to play, playground to play with.
I love that. I'd like to thank Sharon, Marianne, Hamilton, Matt, and every single one of you for staying with us throughout this time, and my girlfriend who keeps crawling to get
We saw her.
Today would say
I think you've handed back over to me, Jason.
Yeah.
I think you cut out a little bit. But yeah, all that I would like to say is just thank you once again to an amazing panel for a fantastic session. Lots and lots of great insights, lots of candor, lots of practical advice in there. So once again, thank you to Sharon, to Marianne, to Matt, to Hamilton, and of course to Jason for chairing such a great session. Thank you all very much. So that's the last session we have today. We'll be back tomorrow though at 11 a.m. GMT for responsible management for today and tomorrow. And then at 3 p.m. GMT for leadership challenges and opportunities, where we'll be looking at challenges and opportunities, of course, in a sort of post-COVID world, and taking into consideration all the different disruptions that we're facing from AI to sustainability tomorrow. So lots to think about and learn. So you should receive an email from us outlining the link to join the sessions. So just make sure that for session 3, you click the link for session 3, for session 4, you click the link for session 4. And otherwise, I will look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. So thank you once again for an amazing panel, which I very much enjoyed. That 90 minutes flew past. And goodbye.
Thank you.